My name is Isabel Monroe, and on the day my daughter collapsed in the middle of her 4th birthday party, the man who once told me either get rid of it or leave dropped to his knees, took her hand with tears in his eyes, and whispered, "I was wrong. I won't run this time." I once walked away from everything: a 7-year relationship, a snow-covered penthouse in Chicago, and a cold check in exchange for a child he didn't want. I raised my daughter alone, survived off the kindness of a stranger, and buried that woman the same day my child was saved by the very man I thought I'd never see again. But the moment that broke me most wasn't betrayal. It was when Elliot looked at our daughter for the first time and softly said her name. Lumi, my light. Before I share my story, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you've ever had to stand your ground, for your child or for yourself. Trust me, you'll want to hear what happened next. The pregnancy test trembled in my hand, 2 pink lines blurring through tears I didn't know were falling. Outside our Chicago penthouse, snow swirled against floor-to-ceiling windows, the city 30 floors below us looking like a snow globe someone had shaken too hard. "Elliot?" I called, my voice cracking. "Can you come here?" He appeared in the bathroom doorway, still in his Armani suit from the investment bank, phone pressed to his ear. "I'll call you back," he said, ending the call. His eyes found the test in my hand and something shifted in his face. A closing off, like watching shutters slam shut before a storm. "We need to talk," I said, trying to smile. "I'm pregnant." The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. He loosened his tie, a gesture I'd once found endearing. Now it looked like he was preparing for battle. "How far along?" 6 weeks, maybe 7. He walked to the window, hands in his pockets. The man who commanded boardrooms suddenly looked smaller against the Chicago skyline. "The IPO launches in 3 months, Isabel. I'm about to be named youngest VP in the firm's history." "I know, but..." "Do you?" He turned, and I saw a stranger wearing my boyfriend's face. "Do you know what this means? The press will dig into everything. A freelance artist girlfriend is one thing. A baby mama is a liability." The words hit like physical blows. I sank onto the marble bathroom floor, still clutching the test. "Elliot, this is our child." He pulled out his checkbook. Actually, pulled out his checkbook and started writing. "There's a clinic on Michigan Avenue. Discreet. I'll cover everything and we can move past this." Move past this? I stood, legs shaking. "This is our baby, not a business deal gone wrong." He tore off the check, holding it out. "Then you have a choice. Take care of it or leave. But if you keep it, we're done. No contact, no support, nothing. I won't let you derail everything I've worked for." I stared at the check, then at him. A memory flashed. A gossip blog I'd seen months ago about him and some model, a quickly buried scandal about a pregnancy that mysteriously disappeared. I'd dismissed it then. Now I wondered. "Keep your money," I said, walking past him to our bedroom. I threw clothes into a suitcase, hands moving on autopilot while my mind screamed. As I headed for the door, he called out, "Isabel, be reasonable." I turned. "I am. I'm choosing our child." The elevator doors closed on his face, and I walked into the blizzard, carrying nothing but a suitcase and the future growing inside me. The Greyhound bus smelled like diesel and broken dreams. I'd chosen Asheville because it was far from Chicago and the art scene there might offer work. My savings would last 2 months, maybe 3 if I was careful. The morning sickness made the 20-hour ride feel like a century. I found a room above a pottery shop. Water-stained ceiling, radiator that clanged like a ghost in chains, but it was mine. The landlady, a woman with paint-stained fingers, didn't ask questions when I paid in cash. "Bathrooms down the hall," she said. "No overnight guests, no drugs. Rent's due on the 1st. I waited tables at a cafe that displayed local art, hiding my growing belly under loose aprons. The smell of coffee made me nauseous, but I smiled and poured and pretended my hands weren't swollen from carrying heavy trays. Nights I sketched by candlelight to save electricity, drawing the baby I imagined, tiny fingers, rosebud mouth, eyes I hoped would be kind. 3 months in, cramping doubled me over during the lunch rush. Blood spotted my apron. A customer, an elderly woman with silver hair piled high, caught me as I swayed. "Honey, when's the last time you saw a doctor?" "I'm fine," I lied, gripping the counter. She studied me with eyes that had seen too much. "I'm Delilah. I run the orchid house on Elm Street. You're going to come with me, and we're going to get you checked out." "I can't afford—" Did I ask about money? She wrapped an arm around my waist, surprisingly strong. "I lost a daughter once. I know the look of a woman trying to carry the world alone." The free clinic confirmed what I feared. I was dangerously anemic, dehydrated, on the edge of miscarriage. Delilah sat in that sterile room, holding my hand while the doctor lectured about prenatal care I couldn't afford. "She'll stay with me," Delilah announced, as if it were already decided. "I have room." "I don't need charity," I said, but my voice broke on the last word. "No," she agreed, helping me to her old Subaru. "You need family. Lucky for you, I'm accepting applications." Her house smelled like earth and paint. Canvases lined every wall. Orchids bloomed in impossible colors. She led me to a room with a brass bed and windows facing the mountains. "Rest," she said. "Tomorrow we'll talk about you helping with the orchids. Tonight, you're safe." I curled on the bed, hand on my belly, and for the first time since leaving Chicago, I let myself cry. Not from fear, but from the overwhelming relief of being seen, being helped, being held. Delilah's hands moved like prayers among the orchids, teaching me their Latin names, their needs. "Orchids are survivors," she said, adjusting a bloom. "They grow on air and hope, rather like us, don't you think?" I'd been living with her for 2 months, my belly round as a moon. In exchange for room and board, I helped tend her greenhouse and organize her studio, a chaos of half-finished paintings dating back decades. "You paint," I said one afternoon, finding a self-portrait hidden behind empty frames. "Painted," she corrected. "Past tense. Haven't touched a brush since—" She trailed off, fingers ghosting over the canvas. That night, she found me sketching by the fire. "May I?" She studied my work. The baby surrounded by orchid blooms, protective and wild. "You have something, raw but real. When's the last time you painted? Really painted?" "I can't afford supplies," she snorted. "Child, I have enough paint to cover the Blue Ridge Mountains. Studio's yours if you want it." I started painting between morning sickness and swollen ankles. The work poured out. Mother orchids sheltering seedlings, storms giving way to blooms. Delilah would sit quietly, offering technique tips, sharing stories of the New York art world she'd fled. "Lost my daughter in a car accident," she said one day apropos of nothing. 22 years old, full of fire. "I came here to die, but the damn orchids wouldn't let me." Labor started during an ice storm. The roads were impassable, phone lines down. Delilah, who'd raised orchids and buried a daughter, became my midwife. "Breathe with the pain, not against it," she coached, her voice steady as I screamed. "That's it. She's coming." Lumi arrived as dawn broke through ice-crystalled windows, 6 pounds of fury and beauty. Her name came instantly. Finish for light, because that's what she was. Delilah wrapped her in a quilt she'd hidden in a closet, one she'd made for a granddaughter she'd never have. "She's perfect," Delilah whispered, and I saw tears track down her weathered face. A week later, a stranger came to the greenhouse. Tall, expensive coat, familiar in a way that made my chest tight. He bought 3 paintings, paying cash, barely speaking. His eyes lingered on one of the mother-child orchid paintings. "Beautiful work," he said, voice carefully neutral. "The artist?" "Private commission," Delilah lied smoothly. "Not available." After he left, she locked the door. "How long since you've seen him?" I didn't ask how she knew. "Almost a year." She nodded. "Men always come back. Question is whether we let them in." 3 years passed in a blur of sleepless nights and small miracles. Lumi grew like her namesake. Bright, impossible to ignore. I'd established myself in Asheville's art scene, my Orchid Mother series gaining recognition. Delilah's health was failing, though she'd never admit it. "Mama, why doesn't grandmother paint anymore?" Lumi asked, mixing colors on her tiny palette. "Sometimes people need to rest," I said, watching Delilah doze in her chair. The letter from the National Arts Foundation changed everything. They wanted to feature my work in a touring exhibition. Atlanta, Nashville, eventually New York. Real galleries, real money. A chance at the life I dreamed of before Chicago. You have to go, Delilah said, reading the letter with shaking hands. I can't leave you. I didn't save you to watch you hide forever. Her voice was fierce. Take the child. Show the world what you can do. Atlanta's High Museum was overwhelming. White walls, perfect lighting. My raw pain transformed into something people called visceral and transformative. I wore a dress Delilah had altered, Lumi in a pink tutu she'd chosen herself. Mama, there are so many people, Lumi whispered, clinging to my hand. I know, baby. Just stay close. The curator was introducing me when I saw him. Elliot stood near my largest piece, a woman emerging from ashes cradling an orchid. He was thinner, graying at the temples. The press packet in his hand proclaimed him Chicago's newest political star, here for a fundraising event. Our eyes met across the gallery. Time contracted. Lumi tugged my hand. Mama, I need to potty. Of course, sweet. But she was already running, weaving through the crowd, straight toward the stage where Elliot was climbing for his speech. She tripped on her tutu, sprawling dramatically at his feet. Mama! She wailed, voice carrying over the crowd. I rushed forward as cameras turned. Elliot had already knelt, helping her up with hands that shook. She looked at him with eyes, God help me, exactly like his. Thank you, mister, she said. Then louder, Mama, the nice man helped me. 100 phones rose. A dozen reporters sensed blood. Elliot's campaign manager was pushing through the crowd, face white. But Elliot just stared at Lumi, at me, the world crashing down around us. How old? He asked quietly, ignoring the chaos. 3, I said. He closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were full of something I'd never seen before. Fear. Real, bone-deep fear. I need to give my speech, he said finally. But Isabel, please, don't leave, we need to talk. The headlines were brutal. Political rising star's secret love child. Artist ex-girlfriend surfaces with daughter. They'd found everything. My employment records, the timing of my leaving Chicago, Lumi's birth certificate with the father listed as unknown. My phone rang nonstop. I turned it off, but reporters found the house. Delilah met them with a garden hose and vocabulary that would have made sailors blush. Vultures, she spat, slamming the door. How's the baby? Lumi was coloring, oblivious. Mama, why are people taking pictures of our house? They just really like grandmother's orchids, I lied. The certified letter arrived 3 days later. Law offices of Sterling, Crenshaw, and Associates. My hands shook as I read. Paternity test, custody arrangements, financial obligations, clinical words for the mess we'd made. They can't take her, I said, pacing Delilah's kitchen. He didn't want her. He said... What he said and what he'll claim are different things. Delilah's voice was gentle. You need a lawyer. With what money? Everything I had went to the exhibition. A knock interrupted. Not pounding like reporters, soft, hesitant. I peered through the curtain. Elliot stood on the porch, alone, soaked from rain. Please, he said when I cracked the door. Just 5 minutes? Your lawyers said plenty. I didn't... He stopped, ran a hand through wet hair. I fired them. This morning, I'm not here for... I just want to see her. Once. Please. You made your choice. I was wrong. The words fell like stones. I was terrified, and I was wrong. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything except God, Isabel. She looks just like my mother. Something in his voice broke. I'd seen Elliot command rooms, close $1 million deals, but I'd never seen him beg. She's sleeping, I said finally. You can see her through the window. We stood in the rain, watching Lumi nap on Delilah's couch, thumb in mouth. Mr. Bunny clutched tight. His shoulders shook. Rain or tears, I couldn't tell. What's her name? Lumi. It means light. She's beautiful. He turned to me. I'm withdrawing from the race. The campaign, all of it. I'm done. Elliot, I've been running my whole life. From my father who left, from my mother who... He stopped. I won't run from her. Delilah appeared in the doorway. You two are letting all the heat out. Either come in or go home. We stood there, rain-soaked and broken, until Delilah sighed. "Oh, for heaven's sake, come in. I'll make tea, but if you upset my girls, Elliot Grant, I'll feed you to the orchids." The call came during Lumi's 4th birthday party. She'd been tired lately, bruising easily, but I'd blamed it on growth spurts. When she collapsed cutting her unicorn cake, everything shifted into nightmare. "Acute lymphoblastic leukemia with a rare mutation," the oncologist explained. "We need to start treatment immediately, but she'll need a bone marrow transplant. We'll test family members first. They're most likely to match." I stared at the consent forms. Family members. Delilah gripped my hand. "You have to call him," she said quietly. "I know." Elliot answered on the first ring. "Isabel?" "She's sick." The words tumbled out. "Really sick. She needs. The doctors say family has the best chance to match for bone marrow, and I can't." "Where?" "Children's Hospital of Atlanta." "I'm on my way." He arrived in 6 hours, looking haggard. He'd driven straight through. When he saw Lumi, tiny in the hospital bed, he gripped the doorframe. "Can I?" He gestured to the chair beside her bed. I nodded. He sat carefully, like she might break. Lumi opened her eyes. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi, sweetheart. I'm a friend of your mama's." "Are you here for my birthday? I didn't get to finish my cake." "I'll make sure you get the biggest cake when you're better." His voice cracked. "I promise." The testing was extensive. While we waited for results, Elliot barely left the hospital. He read to Lumi, badly acted out stories, let her paint his nails purple. One night, exhausted, we found ourselves in the family lounge. "I need to tell you something," he said, "about why I reacted how I did." I waited. "My father left when Mom was pregnant with me. She raised me alone, struggled every day. When I was 12, she killed herself. Left a note saying she was too tired to fight anymore." He stared at his hands. "I swore I'd never do that to a child, never be responsible for that kind of pain. So when you told me, you ran. I became my father." The self-loathing in his voice was sharp. "The thing I hated most." The doctor interrupted, holding results. "Mr. Grant, you're a match. Nearly perfect, actually, but there's something else. The genetic screening showed you carry markers for hereditary depression and anxiety disorder. It's manageable with treatment, but you should know." "I'll do it," Elliot said immediately. "Whatever she needs." "The markers, Lumi has them too. She'll need monitoring as she grows." We absorbed this silently. Our daughter would carry both our gifts and our demons. "We'll handle it," I said finally. "Together or apart, we'll handle it." The transplant took. Watching Lumi's counts climb felt like watching the sun rise after endless night. Elliot stayed through it all, sleeping in hospital chairs, yay, learning medical terms, becoming an expert in childhood cancer. "Why don't I have a daddy?" Lumi asked one day out of nowhere. Elliot froze. We'd agreed to let her lead these conversations. "You do," I said carefully. "He just wasn't ready to be a daddy at first." "Is he ready now?" I looked at Elliot, who was barely breathing. "I think maybe he is." "Good," she decided. "Can he come to Grandmother Delilah's funeral?" The words hit like ice water. "What?" "She told me she's going to become an orchid soon. That's what happens when people are too tired. They become flowers." I called home. Delilah answered, voice weak. "Don't you dare leave that hospital." "Delilah, I've held on long enough to see her get well. That's all I needed. You stay. Love that baby. Both of you." She died that night, peacefully, in the chair by her orchids. The neighbor found her the next morning, paintbrush in hand. She'd started a new canvas, a little girl surrounded by light. We brought Lumi home for the funeral. The entire town came, artists, shopkeepers, everyone Delilah had quietly helped over the years. Elliot helped carry the casket, tears streaming down his face for a woman he'd barely known but who had saved us all. Cleaning out her studio, I found a letter dated 3 years ago. My hands shook as I read, "Dear Mr. Grant, you don't know me, but I know your Isabel. She's painting again, healing, raising your daughter with grace you don't deserve to witness. Yet, I'm sending you her work not to torment you, but to show you what you gave up, and what you might still choose. People change. God knows I did. If you're reading this, I'm probably gone. But if you found your way back to them, then maybe there's hope for us all. Don't waste it. Delilah. She contacted you, I said, showing Elliot the letter. Every year, he admitted. Paintings of you both. Never with return addresses. They were the only thing that kept me sane. We scattered Delilah's ashes in the orchid greenhouse, Lumi helping. That night, Elliot showed me his own sketches. Hundreds of drawings of the family he'd thrown away, the life he'd imagined. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he said. Just the chance to be her father, however you'll let me. I thought of Delilah, of orchids growing from air and hope. Okay, I said. We'll try. 5 years later, I stood before a packed audience at MoMA, my retrospective spanning the walls. Ashes and Orchids, A Decade of Survival, the programs read. Critics called it my breakthrough, but I knew it was just my life, laid bare. Mama, I'm nervous, Lumi whispered, adjusting her dress. You'll be wonderful, I assured her. At 8, she was scheduled to speak at the charity gala after her idea to help other sick children. The Lumi Light Foundation had raised millions, with Elliot working full-time as director. Deep breaths, Elliot coached her, kneeling to her level, just like we practiced. They'd developed their own rhythm over the years. Not quite a traditional family, but something uniquely ours. He had an apartment nearby, came for dinners, never missed a doctor's appointment or school play. We'd found a balance between what was and what could be. The curator introduced me, but I barely heard. I was watching Lumi and Elliot in the audience, her hand in his, both faces proud. My paintings surrounded us. Pain transformed into beauty, loss into growth. The mother-child orchids, the ashes and rebirths, the light breaking through darkness. After my speech, the crowd dispersed to examine the works. Elliot approached with a wrapped frame. I have something for you, he said quietly. Inside was a painting, amateur but earnest. Me and Lumi in Delilah's greenhouse, surrounded by impossible blooms. He'd captured something I hadn't expected. Joy. I've been taking lessons, he admitted. Turns out I needed my own therapy. Art helps. I handed him my own wrapped frame. His portrait, not as the banker or politician, but as I saw him now. Father, flawed but trying, present. Thank you, he said softly, for letting me try. Lumi's voice rang out from the gala podium. Hi, I'm Lumi Grant Monroe, and I'm 8 years old. When I was 4, I got really sick, but I'm better now because people helped. We stood together, watching our daughter shine. Not as a couple, that ship had sailed, but as something else. Partners, co-parents, family in our own design. You know, Elliot said. Delilah was right. Love isn't about labels. No, I agreed, thinking of orchids growing wild, finding their own way. It's about showing up. The lights of New York glittered beyond the windows. Lumi finished her speech to thunderous applause, racing back to us, face bright with accomplishment. We walked out together into the city night, our daughter between us, hands linked, not in romance, but in something deeper. Something that had survived the ashes and bloomed anyway. Maybe that's all love really is, choosing to stay again and again when it matters most.